That's great. All right. Hey, hi, Larry. Nice to see you. Um, so today we're going to start sort of a work back through and looking at Equip to do it for a couple of specific things that we're going to do. And I'm going to model it for us this week. And then it'll again just be a way to have conversation, but then to get all of us interacting as well with the material. I had a great reminder, the end of last week, beginning of this week. One of our global workers is just starting Equip. And matter of fact, I was pairing them off with one of our faculty mentors. And so I reminded me that finding your way through Equip sometimes, takes a little bit of navigating. And so I thought, okay, this is a good time now or a season for us to sort of go back through each of the outcomes and take a look at what's there. Also, that's for one. And then, but for two is because we always want to be updating the resources that are in Equip with things that we all are finding and using to be helpful in each of those different outcomes, whether it be, leadership, whether it be, biblical understanding, whatever. And so this will be an opportunity for all of us to sort of think in the framework of the teams that we tend to work with primarily, and the people, whether they're our global workers or whether the indigenous or national leaders that we're working with, what resources might be helpful for them to really grow in each of the outcomes. And so to do that, what we're going to do then over the next few months is work through each of the outcomes. And how I would like to invite all of us to do this is what I will model here for us today. And Pam is sending via email to you the sort of the 4-step thing that we'll each do as we come to these calls, so that this won't be a talking head of either me or Larry or whatever, but it's going to be all of us really engaging the material and talking about the material and then thinking regarding who the people that we might be mentoring currently or will be in the future, what would be helpful to them to really gain competency in that particular outcome. So having said that, we're going to start with, and I'm going to take control of the screen and let me get that off of there and that off of there and get right there to our thing. And so today, so this is the Equip Appointee Pathway, and I've got it opened up to the, sorry, I'm just trying to get to the, so I have it opened up to the general pathway, and today, to just sort of demonstrate what I'd like to see us do in the months coming down the pike, is we'll work through slowly the various different outcomes. So I'm going to do today, we're going to start on transformational leadership. And what I'm inviting all of us to do is, after the call today, or at the end of the call, probably is when we'll do it, is I would like everybody to pick one of these lesson blocks in transformational leadership in the appointee path. So I picked today transformational prayer, just it was the first one there. And so you're going to pick one of these. So whether you could do transformational prayer, I want us to try and pick different ones so that we cover a lot of the outcome. Developing your ministry partner team, understanding converged ethos, being a catalyzer of gospel movements. These are some of the lessons blocks that are in this particular outcome. And so I want everybody to pick one of these: leadership principles, your leadership style, team health, theological hospitality. And then you're just going to work through that lesson block. And if it's like read a book, a whole book, if that's part of what's in there, if you have time to read the whole book, great. If you don't, then just, get a general idea of what's the content of the book is the idea. And then essentially I'll walk us through the process of what we'll do on these calls. Is when we come onto the call, then we're going to say, all right, we're in transformational leadership. Who did work through what lesson block? And then you'll have opportunity to just give a little bit of what you gained from that lesson block And so I'm going to just demonstrate it here. So I worked through the lesson block by I picked transformational prayer. I clicked on the first of the activities that were there that just talked about this idea of connecting with God through prayer, and how that this is an important thing for being a movement leader or a leader in any sort of ministry, but especially for those of us that are endeavoring to reach least reached peoples, and how important growing in our own prayer life is, and then also being praying for those that we're working with, whether it be our ministry partners that are supporting us here in the US to do our work, or whether it be the people we're working with on the field, but to be in regular prayer for them. And so that I read through that. And then this idea of prayer for the transformation of others, there was an exercise in here. It was like just a couple minute video. So I watched that. And then I followed the next step, which was, and I actually did what the prayer calendar thing said to do. So because I realized for myself, I have not really been faithful and as persistent in prayer for some of my ministry partners and the people that we're trying to reach in our neighborhood as I'd like. And so my working through this was actually a great reminder for me as the work that God needs to do in my life, as well as the people who are supporting us. And so I, wrote out my list of people to pray for that was recommended to do in that one video, and started to do that again. And then the next thing that was in here was to read these couple of articles from Perspectives. So I've read these before, but I reread them again for this. And I did this all with an open posture of, God, I know I've been through this before, so help me not to like just, skim through this, but help me to actually really think through and invite you to speak to me. What would you have me to do regarding this? And how does this whole thing really, this idea of transformational prayer, how does it really fit into this idea that the central ministry focus in our Converge international ministries focus is to develop transformational leaders? And what do we mean by that? And how does prayer fit into that? So I just really paused before God and asked him to sort of guide me through the time. I read the 2 articles, and then I took these reflection questions and wrote them into my own. I mean, I adapted them, and I've made it in a general thing. So let me call that up for all of us. So basically, I use the head, heart, and hands reflection statements to then reflect on my experience in that particular lesson block. And so for me, like I said, I watched the video, and I did the thing where you write out 1 through 30 and who might I be praying for. And then today is the second day of the month. So then I stopped, and one of the names on the list is one of my neighbors who's going to be in my home here in a couple of hours for our Discovery Bible study. And the other was one of my ministry partners who's been supporting Kevin and I. And so I just took time to pray for both of them. And then the one I will be talking to personally tonight, and I'm going to get an opportunity to let her know that I prayed for her today. So that was sort of a reminder to me of something that I hold dear to my heart, but sometimes, fall away in terms of my practice of really growing as a leader who's personally being transformed by Jesus, and also wants to see Jesus to transform the people that I work in their life. So that the things that really hit me in the articles that I read, and this is sort of on the content thing, was the one article was about really being persistent in prayer. And so that I needed that reminder. And then the other was being strategic, and specifically the strategy. And this is something that I've actually been doing especially for our neighbors in this Discovery Bible study. I've been asking God to really help us. What are the things that are blinding our neighbors from really being able to give themselves to Jesus? What are the things that they've bought into that's keeping them from choosing to really pursue God and know him and to obey him. And so the article just did a great job of reminding me of how important it is to really pray specifically. And they used the 2 Corinthians 10 passage of, anything that's brought up against the true knowledge of God, pray against those things. So anyways, very helpful content. And then I would say on the character piece, for me, it was just the reminder of that I'm asking the Holy Spirit to continue to grow me really in the process of that, I would call it self-control, but of, the consistent and persistent prayer. It's easy for me to lose heart and not keep praying because I don't see quote unquote results right away. So God, really sort of pricked my character on that. And then on the craft side, I would just say it was a renewal of something that I know is important, and that is that regular practice of praying specifically for neighbors and for ministry partners. So those were, sort of my reflections on that particular lesson, and I see how really this particular lesson in the overall transformational leadership, it's really the heart of what we do as leaders is really to grow in presenting ourselves before God and inviting him to do his work of transformation in us, because it's only as he does that we can help to develop other transformational leaders. And so that's sort of the sort of overall reflection of how does this particular lesson piece fit into the overall outcome of growing as a transformational leader. That's part of our Equip path. I'm going to just throw it open. Let me stop sharing too here. Any thoughts or feedback as they're going that might have spurred something for you as I was sharing my reflection on that particular thing?
I got my little calendar right here, but I'm not always very disciplined either.
This really was a very helpful tool that we experienced 4 years ago and are, intermittently
Well, and it's been
applying it.
remarkable since I've been doing that, how our partner development went to a whole new level.
Mhm.
People that know you're praying with them monthly or on a regular basis, they tend to be generous towards you versus dropping you. So that was not why we did it. Wasn't part of the plan, but it was part of God's plan, and that seems to be resonate with other people as well, their experience.
Well, and the other thing that in the articles that was such a good reminder for me was just the idea of God really is the one who does the work. And, so this idea, and I have it, it comes up on my phone daily to remind myself to pray for you guys, to pray for some of our global workers, but then also for our ministry partners, who amongst especially of our ministry partners, Lord, might be future laborers in your harvest. And would you raise those up? And would you use me in whatever way you need to promote and prompt others to consider, pursuing you into missions. And so I think the thing in the article that really caught me was just that reminder of that God really is the initiator of all of this, and he's inviting us to partner with him. And so, but they linked it to the parable of the persistent widow with the judge, of really this idea that, what we're living in this world is not what God designed. And so really having that heart that says, God, I'm completely joining with you, that we want people to know you and to see your beauty and to be transformed, because what people are living is not what you had ever designed. And so it ups the level of, passion and intensity. And sometimes I need that reminder. How about generally? So the last thing that I want us to do on these reflection exercises is we really do want to have the best materials and resources, available and in our paths for our people to work with. So I'm going to just throw the general question open here. Have any of you been reading any books, listening to any podcasts, anything that would fall in this general idea of transformational leadership that might be helpful generally across the board or specifically to people that you're working with in your context, in your particular ministry context?
Can I ask a question? Is that the only place that prayer is talked? I'm not asking this in an accusatory
No.
way. Is that
Yeah.
the only place that prayer is mentioned in the pathway, or is it in many?
In
Okay.
this pathway, in transformational leadership, it's the only place where there's an exercise that's specifically about how prayer has to be an integral part of a transformational leader's life. The whole personal development outcome, the whole first half
Okay.
of it is about growing in your personal connection with God, and that, through prayer,
Okay.
through other things. So I don't believe there's any other lesson block pieces in transformational leadership
All right,
on
understood.
this.
Yeah, I love the idea of going through this ourselves. So this is not to answer your question directly, maybe it's a little bit behind, but to be able to help us understand what the people that we're mentoring are doing and understand maybe some of the questions that they'll have, to understand the level of what it takes to do that block. And it's just putting ourselves in their shoes. So it's a way to gather empathy as well as to say, hey, is there something else that needs to be added? Like you're saying, like you're asking now. So
Yeah, and that's, I mean, really, we're still in what I would call beta testing phase of this first rollout of the Equip, path. And this right now we're looking at the appointee. But in my mind, I'm already thinking through, and that's what I want us as faculty mentors as we're starting to interact with mentees and stuff. What might be better for us? How might we better design this for 2.0? What other resources and materials do you want to do? So that's why I want it. That's sort of the idea behind this, is to get us thinking and talking about that for the future. But thank you, Tanya. Yeah, that's great.
It's an old one, but a good one. I just finished rereading Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire by Jim Cymbala.
Oh, yeah.
And it actually has a lot on leadership and pastoral development in that missional sense. Leadership, like his own story of growing in leadership, really struck me this time because I'm reading it 20 years later.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a really good one to go back to.
Not sure if that's in our in the recommended resources, but if it's not, we'll make sure it gets up in there. So. And actually, as we're doing this, I really do want to even throw out, if like on that, if you interact with something and you really find it, helpful to you, if you're willing to, and I'm not just saying this to you, Chris, I'm saying this to all of us, but if any of us, as we're reading something, we might not have people read a whole book, but we might encourage them to read a chapter or two. So like you had said, I was really struck by these things, and then to write up some reflection questions that relate to that. These are the kind of additional resources that we're adding, especially to the deployed path, but will also go in the resource library. That it's really helpful to have more of those kind of things, that then when people are saying, yeah, I need some more examples of other, movement leaders or whatever. And then if we have something that's already there for them, I find it's really helpful. And especially when people are just getting going, and especially in ours in the deployed path, because the A path is all set. So it's easier for them to sort of work through that. The deployed path, they have to really, work with their mentor team to think through, what other areas that I really want to grow in, and having a few of those things that are sort of preset assignments that they can choose from, it's actually really helpful. So if that's something, that's something you enjoy doing, then on that particular one, I'd love it. Someone did one recently for, gosh, now I can't remember what book it was. And they just recommended reading 2 chapters, and then they wrote up some discussion questions from it. And this is the beauty of having our people have the access to the digital theological library, is they don't have to purchase the whole book, and they can go in and just access those couple of chapters or 1 chapter or whatever. So.
So can I case study something out with you for a minute on, so your topic for today was prayer. Collectively on this call, I bet we've read 100 books about prayer. Mary's probably read 99, and the rest of us have each read 1, but so we've read 1 million books on prayer. Some of them are way better than others. And even if you just begin to look at the resource lists that we're already compiling, or the whole theological library, it's big, right? And so I'm wondering, like, my high school English teacher made us write 1 paragraph book reviews, and it was either buy it, burn it, or borrow it. We always had to start with that, so it tiered it into good, bad, or, borrow it because there's a few nuggets in there. I'm wondering if, not that system, but if we shouldn't come up with some way to let people know why a particular book was recommended. Like, could we, I'd be happy to do this. If I'm recommending, my favorite book on prayer is X, and here's why, 2 or 3 sentences, that might be helpful as people are sorting through.
That's a great idea.
I mean, Ann and I presented, for those of you that weren't in the Canary Islands with us, we presented on marriage. And then we met with a number of people on that topic of, marriage and ministry. And because of all the preaching I did on marriage, without exaggeration, I've read like 100 books on Christian marriage, of which I would recommend like 3. And so, I mean, because most of them, it's just chaff, it's the same old stuff. And so like I said to several people, we can save you a lot of time by not reading all those other books, but read these couple. And so I think that kind of feedback is really well received by our people, but I just don't know, again, how we would put that together. So
so there's a couple of thoughts on that, which everybody else chime in. But so in the path already, there's, for the appointee path, there are required reads, right?
Right.
But then there's also a tab that says recommended, and we tried to limit that to, I think it's like 10 was the max, and we kept it more around 4 to 6. So those were sort of like the most recommended by most of our people, on the topic. And then there was other, and then you can go through the list and you might find, 40 books on some of the topics. But we don't have that additional piece. And I've actually thought about that, like, as I've been working with Jan Hoffman and others, as they've been doing their book reflections, she's a really good one who captures a lot of good stuff. And so I was thinking maybe if we actually invited a few of our global workers as they're going through Equip, if they'd be willing to do that on a couple, why this book, 2 sentences about what it's about, which they already do in their reflection form, and then why they recommend the read, that might be a way to do it. Also, I like your idea of inviting all of us faculty mentors to do that. I've been, like even doing this today and sort of sending out this idea, this assignment of all of us doing this. I've tried to keep, I know everybody's got full lives, so, but I also realize we need everyone to be interacting with the Equip, what's actually in there, so that they're ready when they have students. So the lesson blocks: transformational prayer, developing.
Is developing your ministry partner team where people watch all of Dave Sherman's things?
That is one of the things that's in there. They do most of the watching those videos before they actually come to this. So it's more of a follow-up and then setting up an apartment with him. Then understanding Converge ethos, just reviewing the pathway, our org chart, what our regional gatherings are, and then just some of the stuff that was in. So it's a pretty simple one. you would just have to really reflect on it and how it would be helpful. The Calorizer Gospel Movement. This is sort of a large one. So even if a couple of you took this and then took like half, of it, Larry's video that we broke up into 7 parts, and then there's questions. That's what that first one is. If you've already done a gospel movement training, you could just reflect on your time in that in your cohort. There's perspectives and Modus Dei articles to read. And then one of the articles in Modus Dei, Steve Valentine does a reflection back on his article. So that's what's in that particular one. Understanding Mentoring has reading a book by Randy Reese, and then reflecting on a couple of mentoring experiences that you've been involved in. Leadership Principles is reading Steward Leader, reviewing your spiritual gifts, some perspectives articles, a brief thing about public speaking and some basic stuff there. Team Health and Dynamics. It's really, we're just reviewing those assessments that we all probably took, or if you didn't and you've taken some other leadership type things, it's reviewing what you got in those and then just do a reflection on them. And then the last is Practicing Theological Hospitality, and there's some articles to read there from Kairos and that. So and I know it's a little hard to sometimes pick from this sort of thing, so I think I'm just going to leave it. Could everybody do that and send me by, the Wednesday next week, which lesson block you're going to work through? And if we all end up working through the same blocks, oh well, I'm not going to sweat it out. I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other.